Welcome to Module 4 of Week 5 for ED 1421. The focus of this week's presentation will be the variety of literacy practices that we engage in when we interact with texts. This module is called Literacy or Literacies, and for a good reason, as you're about to find out. Throughout this week, we'll be examining literacy as a social practice and how it is a set of practices used in different contexts. Therefore, we cannot just discuss literacy as a singular term. Rather, we need to look at it as plural, as literacies rather than only literacy. As you progress through this module, you will learn why this distinction is so important. In this module, we will identify texts as meaningful events involving language. We will discuss literacies as a repertoire of practices. This repertoire of practices includes the 4 resources model, which is used to identify the 4 different aspects of being literate. And lastly, we will understand the word text to mean more than just written words. It is also what the reader brings to the word. In other words, how they make meaning from the word. Before we begin, we need to think about the following questions. Firstly, how do you see literacy? What I mean is, what do you see it as being made up of, or what does it involve? Secondly, how is the term literacy represented in the media? So, what is popular media saying about literacy in schools and in regards to teachers' literacy abilities? Thirdly, what sort of things are people saying about literacy? What are you hearing, particularly family members and friends, saying about literacy or reading and anything to do with making meaning from text? Fourthly, what do you think about what people are saying? What do you think about the current literacy levels of students and teachers? And second last, how does one become literate? Or how did you become literate? So what strategies are needed to implement to encourage the acquisition of literacy? And lastly, what do we mean by literacy standards and what would they look like? This final question is the most important for teachers, as you'll be required to teach and assess literacy. So you'll need to know what literacy standards you are looking for. Now to the core of this module. We know that literacy is a repertoire of practices. It is not just reading and writing as conventionally thought. The Literate Futures Report in 2000 defines literacy as the flexible and sustainable mastery of a repertoire of practices with a text of traditional and new communications technologies via spoken language, print and multimedia. Clearly from this definition, literacy includes spoken language and multimedia. However, there are other facets that are not mentioned in this definition, but are pivotal to understanding literacy acquisition. Peter Freebody and Alan Luke, 2 education professors, developed a framework to illustrate 4 literacy practices, known as a 4 resources model of literacy education. They found that literate people use each of the 4 practices as they read various forms of text. These practices are called code breaker, as you see up here in the top left, text participant, here in the top right, text user, here in the bottom left, and lastly, text analysis on the bottom right. We will now look at each of these ones separately. So, firstly, code breaker. To define the term code breaker, it means when the reader can read or sound out the words in sequence, meaning that they can articulate the words orally, such as I am right now. This definition of literacy is the most common, as most people consider literacy as having the ability to read words on a page with reasonable accuracy, intonation, etc., and the ability to use knowledge of sound-letter relationships, spelling, punctuations, in order to write effectively. Thus, there are 2 forms of breaking the code. There is encoding and decoding. Encoding is the individual's ability to use the conventions of grammar, punctuation, and spelling when writing, thus they are encoding. Whereas decoding is the individual's ability to decipher symbols on the page and know what sounds these symbols refer to when reading print, thus the ability to write, or encode. So secondly, we have the text participant. To define text participant, it means when the reader is active in making meaning of a text. Thus, the user, or reader, is able to make meaning from visual and non-visual information. The visual information is letters and words on a page, and the non-visual information is the assumed knowledge of the reader. To be a text participant in the university setting, you need to be familiar with the visual and non-visual information so that you can become familiar with the discourses of university. We know from previous modules that insiders can participate with information exchange within a discourse, but outsiders cannot. Therefore, when visual, but particularly non-visual information becomes internalised, the reader becomes an insider to the discourse. Thus, being a text participant is very important if an individual wants to become a member of a discourse, such as you're experiencing right now as a university student. Thirdly, we have the term text user. To define text user, it means when the reader can use a text in a particular way that is intended by the culture in which the text is found. These texts are known as different genres, meaning each genre is a different type of text that is formatted according to the particular conventions. Text users know there are different types of text that are used for different purposes, and each requires specific literacy practices. For example, a recipe, a roadmap, an essay, a play, each have distinctive features and language that is particular to its genre, and even within these genres, they differ according to the context. For this reason, text users need cultural knowledge to make each genre to serve its socio-cultural function. For example, the context of situation determines the specifics of what is included in each genre, such as a McDonald's menu compared to a Ridges Plaza menu. The context of situation influences the menu's features and language. It would be out of context to create a Ridges Plaza menu in a fast food restaurant, and vice versa. Lastly, we have the term text analysis, the most important skill that university students need to develop. To define text analysis, it is when the reader reads text with particular sets of questions to systematically analyse the meaning within the text. It involves looking beneath the surface layer of meaning and establishing what's going on in terms of power relations, information, values, social processes, and a lot of other things that all sit within a text. It is also known as critical analysis, meaning to analyse a text from a critical perspective. You have probably garnered this so far in your university experience that most literate people can read at the decoding stage, but they are not very good at being text analysis. Therefore, the aim of education is becoming an effective text analyst, not just being able to decode and encode or use text. To summarise Module 4, we now know that individuals make meaning of text using a variety of literacy practices. We know that the 4 resources model can help identify the different aspects of being literate, such as code breaker, text participant, text user, and text analysis. A code breaker is reading to decode the print and sound symbol links that are present within print. A text participant or meaning maker reads the text for comprehension, and a text user is equipped to recognise the features of a text, such as its genre, and construct the text. Lastly, a text analyst deconstructs the underlying meaning of a text, which is not only the most valued skill in the university setting, but also for life and your students. That pretty much wraps up Module 4. If you have any further questions, please post questions about the subject or this module in the frequently asked questions located in LearnJCU, or contact me directly by email. See the subject outline, the LibGuide, LearnJCU and Facebook for further contact details and information about this subject. Thank you again for listening to Module 4 Literacy or Literacies. Next week I'll present a video for Module 5 Literacy Events and Practices. Please subscribe and comment. Any feedback is appreciated. Thank you.